You know, there is nothing more relaxing than just sitting on the beach, enjoying the sun, enjoying a nice cold beverage. And you know what else I'm doing? I'm flying my drone. Hi. But the thing is, drone flying can be really stressful for some people at certain times, especially for beginners. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to make flying your drone less stressful. The things that stress drone pilots out usually fall into maybe 2 or 3 different categories. The first would be, of course, crashing your drone. The second one would be losing your drone, and of course some combination of those two. And then maybe the last category is just damaging your drone in some other way. By the way, stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to talk about ways that you can personally customize your stress reduction when it comes to drone flying. When it comes to losing your drone, the good news is, unless you've bought a toy drone, you probably have some built-in measures already in your drone to keep you from losing it under most circumstances. For example, most drones have a return to home feature if it loses signal with your controller. Likewise, many drones will automatically come back to home base if they are about to run out of battery. So that's a good feature as well. And finally, a lot of drones have a find my drone feature. So even if you do end up crashing it or losing it somewhere, it'll mark the spot on a map and then you can go and try and retrieve it. However, there are some circumstances where your drone might not be able to make it back. And the biggest cause of this would probably be wind. Your drone estimates how far it can go away from home base before having to return. However, what happens is if you're flying with the wind, then the wind is giving your drone a boost and it's thinking it can go a lot further. Then when you turn around and you fly against the wind, it doesn't have enough battery power left. So to save yourself some stress, whenever there's any wind at all, first of all, be aware of which way the wind is blowing. If you can, alter your flight path so that you take off into the wind and then return with the wind. But now, obviously that's not always possible. Sometimes you're just, you're in one location, you're shooting location somewhere else and you get what you get. If that's the case, watch that battery indicator. Don't wait until you get into the yellow and red. Come back with the green because you don't want to be fighting that wind. You don't want to be stressed, hoping that your drone is going to make it back. Believe me, that is not fun. Likewise, watch that battery if you are flying over water or inaccessible terrain, because if you're flying over water and you can't make it back on time, your lost drone situation turns into a crashed drone and a drowned drone situation, and you don't want that. And of course, inaccessible terrain, if you can't get there to get your drone back, it might as well be crashed because it's gone. So one tip to avoid a lost drone and to reduce stress is to have multiple batteries. Now, yes, I know you can't change a battery mid-flight. That's not going to save you if you're running out of juice. But if you only have one battery, you're going to feel the urge to use that battery to its fullest, to have the most epic drone flight possible and to be up in the air as long as possible. However, that's when you run risks. So have multiple batteries. Go out, be conservative, come back, go out, come back. That's a safer way to do it. In terms of avoiding crashing your drone, obviously you could be ultra conservative and just never fly anywhere near objects ever, but that can be a little boring because some of the most dramatic flights are when you fly by something. So be aware that some drones, especially the more expensive drones, have collision avoidance technology built into them. One of the drones I have can detect objects in front, behind, and from the sides, but not from the top. And then a smaller drone I have, it can only detect downward, so it can only detect the ground. So I have to be a lot more careful with that drone than I do with the more expensive one. Now the good news is that if you do bump into something, your drone's propellers can be replaced. In fact, I did a video on how to replace them a while ago. It's a pretty straightforward process. However, if you bump into something, there's no guarantee that it's just the propeller that's going to break. Hopefully that's the case, but you could damage the motors and other things as well, the camera and something like that. So you want to avoid hitting things. Many drones have aftermarket propeller guards you can buy, so you can help protect the propellers in case of a crash. However, keep in mind that they do add weight to your drone, so that is going to reduce your flying time, sometimes quite dramatically depending on how heavy they are. Also, propeller guards, they can look a little embarrassing. I know this sounds kind of lame, but one of the best ways to avoid crashes is just know how to fly your drone. And I know that sounds vague, so let me be more specific. Know your controller so well that you have muscle memory. You know without even thinking which controller does what. Know how to fly your drone, know how to do it, well, not with your eyes closed, but that muscle memory. It's really important. And to do that, all you have to do is just go to the park or go, fly it around your backyard. But practice, practice, practice. There are some other things that can destroy your drone over time, and even though they're not as stressful as the thought of crashing your drone, perhaps, there's still something you should be concerned about because, your drone is an expensive piece of equipment. Never fly your drone in rain or snow. I mean, that should be obvious, but I've seen YouTubers who are doing that, flying it in the snow, and you're just gonna get water in the motors, you're gonna get corrosion, and that's just not good for your drone. Another thing to worry about is dust and dirt, because when you're landing and taking off, those propellers can throw up a lot of dust, and some of that is getting into the motors. It just can't be helped. So if you can, don't take off and land in such situations. Have some sort of flat surface that you can take off from. It doesn't have to be a store-bought drone landing pad. It can be sort of anything flat and stiff, but be aware of that. And if you're taking off and landing in rough terrain, you run the risk of your drone's propeller hitting something as it moves side to side as it's landing or taking off. It's a beautiful day and I think I'm gonna fly my drone. However, if you notice, there's a lot of dirt and a lot of rocks around here. But good news, there's a picnic table. I don't need a drone landing pad because I've got one built in right here. By the way, I used to suggest to people that if you couldn't take off or land your drone on a stable surface, you could just launch it with your hand and catch it the same way. And then I caught it by reaching too far up and got my fingers into the propellers, and maybe it was the fact that I was using some third-party propeller makers, but they were really sharp. I cut myself so bad, very deeply on my fingers. You can see in this picture here the blood on the side of my drone. So now I don't recommend that quite so much. Okay, so let's figure out what is stressing you specifically about drones. Next time you go fly your drone, be very aware of your stress levels from the get-go, from when you're going to the location, when you're opening up your drone case, you're setting things up, you launch it, you fly it, you bring it back. Where were you most stressed? That's what we need to work on. So for example, if you find that you are most stressed when you're launching your drone, launch it, land it, launch it, land it. It's totally okay to look like a doofus and just go up and down, up and down, up and down. The problem with drone pilots, especially new ones, is that they want every drone flight to be epic, and it just doesn't have to be that way. It's totally okay to practice, and you will feel less stressed as a result. So please find that part of the flight that stresses you out most and practice it. Also, be mindful of who you're flying with, and by that I mean, if you're with somebody when you're flying, make sure it's someone who is open to the idea of you flying your drone. Not everyone is. My wife is a lovely woman, but when we go on a hike, she likes to keep moving. She does not want to stop for me to fly my drone. Now, she's okay with me flying it. She's not waiting for me though. So that adds a little bit of stress because I want to fly it, but I also want to keep up with her. But my youngest son, he loves to fly drones. He wants to fly it alongside me, and we have a grand old time. So keep that in mind too. That might be a stressor that you're not even thinking about. Like anything else important, flying a drone takes practice, and the more you do it, the better you get. And the better you are, the more comfortable you are, and the less stressed you are. And when you get to that next level, then you're gonna start asking yourself, how do I make my drone footage more epic, more cinematic? And good news, I've got a video made just for you, how to make your drone footage more cinematic. If you click right here, check it out, and you can take your drone footage to that next level.